Turn the car around now. Turn it around. If I hadn't trusted my gut that day, I would have crossed the border carrying a cake filled with drugs, baked by the man who used to call me Mom. That day, the rain was pouring, the road was empty, and something inside me screamed louder than the storm outside. I didn't know what it was, fear instinct or a mother's sixth sense, but I knew I had to listen. They told me it was just a peace offering, a simple apple pie, a sweet gesture to make things right again after years of silence. But when life teaches you the hard way, you learn anything that smells too sweet might be hiding something rotten. He was my son-in-law, once charming, full of promises and dreams. I thought I was gaining a son. I didn't know I was welcoming a storm. I watched him pull my daughter into chaos, gambling lies, broken promises. I watched her smile fade, her hope vanish. And through it all, I kept helping. Because that's what mothers do, right? We give. We forgive. Even when love becomes a weapon pointed back at us. And then came the call. Mom, let's make peace. Come for dinner. He said he baked something special. A pie. My favorite. I wanted to believe. I wanted to think, maybe people do change. Maybe love can heal. But that night, something didn't feel right. His smile was too wide. His eyes wouldn't meet mine. And when he said, "Take it with you for Henry's birthday in Canada," my heart skipped a beat. Still, I took it, because love makes fools of us all. It wasn't until I opened that pie, hours later, that I realized my kindness had been turned into camouflage. Underneath the crust, hidden deep inside, were 3 small bags of white powder. In that moment, everything stopped. My breath, my trust, my illusion. He almost cost me my freedom, using the one thing I never stopped giving: love. Let me tell you how love turned into a weapon and how I took my life back. To understand why that pie nearly cost me everything, we need to go back 5 years. One mistake and a mother's endless love. To understand why that pie nearly cost me everything, we need to go back 5 years, one mistake and a mother's endless love. My name is Margaret Lane. I'm 67 years old. I've spent most of my life surrounded by books, not people. For 30 years, I worked as a librarian in Portland, Oregon, a quiet woman in a quiet town. After my husband passed away too soon, I devoted every heartbeat I had left to raising my daughter, Clara. She was my whole world, polite, gentle, and full of light. The kind of girl who stayed after church to help clean up, who still said please and thank you, and who believed love could fix anything. I taught her that if you lived with honesty, worked hard, and treated people kindly, life would be fair in return. But I never taught her the truth that sometimes love can blind you more than hate ever could. When Clara turned 26, she met Eli Turner. He came into our lives with that easy smile and polished shoes, the kind of man who remembered names, opened doors, and never forgot to bring flowers. He had a way of talking that made you feel like the only person in the room. The first time I met him, he shook my hand, looked me straight in the eyes, and said, "Mrs. Lane, I'll take care of her." And for a moment, I believed him. Clara was radiant with him. Laughter came easily. Her eyes sparkled again. She told me they talked about building a future, maybe opening a coffee shop, traveling, raising a family. As a mother, all you want is to see your child happy. So I smiled, and I told her, "If you're happy, then I am too." Their wedding was small but beautiful. White daisies, soft music, a promise of forever. I remember sitting in the front row, holding back tears, thinking how proud her father would have been. I thought I was gaining a son. I didn't know I was inheriting a storm. At first, everything seemed perfect. They moved into a small apartment near the park. She would send me photos of the meals they cooked, the plants they grew, the laughter they shared. Sundays were for phone calls full of stories and plans. She told me they were saving up, that Eli was working hard, that life was finally finding its rhythm. But then slowly the stories stopped. The phone calls grew shorter. The smiles in the photos looked tired. When I visited, the house wasn't as tidy as before. Dishes in the sink, bills on the counter, And Clara, my sweet girl, had that distant look in her eyes, the one you get when you're trying to convince yourself everything is fine. "Are you okay?" I asked. She nodded too quickly. "He's just stressed, Mom. He's trying his best." And I wanted to believe her. I really did. Because sometimes, believing the lie feels safer than facing the truth. I told myself every couple struggles. I told myself they were young, they'd figure it out. I told myself that love, real love, could weather anything. But the truth? Storms don't always start with thunder. Sometimes they start with silence. I didn't know it then, but those small cracks, the quiet pauses, the unspoken things were the beginning of everything that would follow. If I'd looked closer, if I'd asked harder questions, maybe I could have stopped what was coming. But mothers, we see what we want to see. We hope until it hurts. And soon that storm I didn't see coming would tear my family apart. They say love is patient, but no one tells you what happens when patience turns into pain. It started small, a lost job, a sigh too long, a silence too heavy. Eli said the company downsized, that the boss was unfair, that it was temporary. Clara believed him. She always believed him. She picked up extra shifts at the music school, smiled through exhaustion, and said, "It's just a rough patch, Mom. He'll find something soon." I wanted to believe it too, because believing meant peace. And peace, even false peace, felt better than facing what might be real. But weeks turned into months, and with every passing day, the light in Clara's eyes dimmed. He started drinking. At first, it was just a beer after dinner, then two, then bottles stacked behind the trash receipts hidden in drawers. When he lost another part-time job, he blamed the weather, the traffic, the economy, never himself. Then came the cards, the bets, the promises. He'd say, "I just need a little luck to get us back on track." But luck like love can't be borrowed. Soon the phone calls started, late-at-night voices I didn't recognize asking for money. Clara brushed it off. "It's just a misunderstanding." But misunderstandings don't leave bruises on wrists or fear in someone's voice. I didn't know the truth until the day she came home, eyes red sleeve, pulled down too far. I saw the mark when she reached for the kettle. A dark, ugly bruise. It said more than words ever could. "Clara," I whispered. "What happened?" She froze, then smiled that practiced, trembling smile. "He was upset, Mom. He said he's sorry. He promised to get clean." Get clean. Those two words felt like stones in my chest. That night, after she went to bed, I sat in the kitchen staring at the clock. Each tick sounded like judgment. Where had I gone wrong? How did the little girl who once sang hymns now whisper excuses for a man who broke her spirit? The next morning, I wrote a check. Rent, medical bills, groceries. It wasn't the first, and it wouldn't be the last. Every dollar was a prayer. Every signature, a fragile thread, tying my hope to their future. He promised to enter rehab. Twice he did. Twice he walked out. Each time he returned with flowers, apologies, and a list of reasons why it wasn't his fault. Each time Clara forgave. And I stayed silent. Because I thought love meant support. Because I thought saving them meant saving her. Then came Henry. A beautiful boy with his mother's eyes and his father's charm. For a moment, I believed a child could change everything, that maybe holding a piece of innocence might make Eli remember his own. But I was wrong. I thought a child might fix what was broken. I whisper now. Instead, it gave him more to lose and more reasons to lie. The more Clara worked, the more he spent. The more he promised, the more he disappeared. There were nights she called me crying, whispering from the bathroom, afraid to wake him. And still she said, "He's trying, Mom." I know he is. I wanted to tell her, love doesn't mean losing yourself, that forgiveness without change isn't healing, it's surrender. But how do you teach your child a lesson you never learned yourself? So I kept helping. When the car broke down, I paid. When the landlord threatened eviction, I called. When he owed money to men I'd never met, I sent more than I could afford. Each time, I told myself, this is the last. Each time, my heart overruled my reason. And then one evening, I came over unannounced. Clara opened the door, eyes swollen, cheeks pale. Henry sat on the floor playing with a stuffed bear, the silence too heavy for a home with a child. "Where's Eli?" I asked. "Out," she said softly. He said he had a meeting, but the way her hands shook told me the truth. I made tea, put Henry to bed, and sat beside her. She tried to hold it together, but when she looked at her sleeping son, her lips quivered. "Mom," she whispered, "do you think people can really change?" I looked at her, at the woman she'd become, at the little girl I still saw. And I said the only truth I knew. Not if they don't want to. That night I stayed. When the door finally opened, Eli staggered in smelling like whiskey and regret. He glanced at me, muttered something about bad luck, then vanished into the bedroom. I held Clara's hand until she fell asleep, tears drying on her cheeks. And when I tucked Henry under his blanket, he stirred, murmured "Grandma," before falling back into dreams. In that moment, I made a silent vow, one carved deep into my bones. No matter what storms came, no matter how much it cost me, I'll always protect you, even if it means protecting you from the people you love. 5 years. That's how long I kept telling myself, just a little more time and things will get better. 5 years of sending money every single month for rent, car payments, insurance, hospital bills. 5 years of quiet sacrifices no one ever saw. Every time my pension arrived, I sat at the old wooden kitchen table, opened the frayed notebook where I kept every expense. I divided it carefully, a small portion for my own medicine utilities, a modest meal plan, and the rest I sent to my daughter's family. The numbers kept shrinking, not because life got cheaper, but because a mother's heart always costs more than logic. One month they needed rent because Eli had quit to prepare for his new business. The next month it was car repairs. He needs it to work. When winter came, Clara said Henry was sick again and needed more medicine. Then came the insurance renewal, another unexpected bill, and always a promise from Eli. "We'll pay you back soon, Mom." I transferred the money in silence. Each click of send felt like cutting off a piece of myself. Another winter, with the same worn coat, another season with patched shoes, another dinner made thinner by soup and bread. Every call from Clara ended the same way. "I'll pay you back, Mom. When things settle, I promise." She said it so softly, it almost lulled me, and I let myself believe. That promise became a song I played on repeat, one I knew by heart, but still couldn't stop listening to. But not once in all those years did a single dollar come back. Still I smiled, because mothers don't count what they give. "It's family," I'd whisper to myself, sealing another envelope. "You don't keep receipts for love." Friends warned me. Over tea after church, they'd say, "Margaret, you're not helping them, you're enabling them." I would smile that tired smile, the one you give when words can't reach you. "I'm helping them stand," I'd say, because I truly believed love meant lifting others, even if it broke your own back. But 5 years later, they still hadn't stood. If anything, they'd sunk deeper into excuses, into debts, into a life built on borrowed promises. The calls came less often now, not to share updates or joy, only needs. A new payment, a hospital fee, another emergency. And every time I reached deeper into savings that were never meant to stretch this far, I started cutting corners, switched to instant coffee delayed. Doctor visits, mended old clothes. My neighbors called me thrifty. I knew better. I wasn't frugal. I was fading. There's a loneliness in giving too much, an emptiness that grows when your love becomes invisible to the ones you love most. Sometimes late at night, I'd open the photo album Clara, in her wedding dress, smiling with that light I used to know. And I'd ask the quiet room, where did that girl go? I missed her. Not the grown woman calling only when the bills came due, but the little girl who once curled beside me with a storybook, who believed kindness could fix anything. I wanted to ask, are you happy? But I already knew, and I wasn't sure any of us were. Still, I kept going, because stopping felt cruel, because I didn't know how to love halfway. Then one afternoon, the phone rang. It was Eli. His tone was smooth, too practiced. The kind of voice people use when they're about to ask for something big. "Mom," he began, "I've got a new business idea. This one's real. I just need 5,000 to get started. After this, we'll be fine. No more asking. I promise. 5,000. To some, it's a number. To me, it was everything. I had left the line between surviving and emptying myself completely. For the first time in years, I didn't rush to say yes. I looked at the stack of unpaid bills, the half-empty medicine bottle, the sun-faded curtains I'd promised myself to replace 3 summers ago. And something inside me, quiet for so long, finally spoke. "I'm sorry, Eli." I said, steady but soft. "I can't this time." There was a pause. Then his voice turned cold, sharp like ice. Then, "Don't expect to see your daughter again." The line went dead. I sat there, the phone heavy in my hand, waiting for it to ring again, waiting for Clara's voice to break through the silence. "He didn't mean it, Mom. Don't be upset." But it never came. Not that day, not the next month. And slowly I realized what I'd really lost. It wasn't just money. It was connection. It was the illusion that love alone could fix what was broken. That night I sat by the window, the lamp casting long shadows across the room. The chair across from me was empty. It always had been. I thought of every birthday missed, every dinner alone, every letter unanswered. And I whispered, maybe in trying to help them stand, I forgot how to stand myself. Outside, the rain began to fall, gentle at first, then steady, tapping against the glass, like a truth I'd tried too long to ignore. I closed my eyes, folded my hands, and told myself I'd done my best. But deep down I knew. Something had changed. That was the night love finally met its limit. And beyond that line waited a lesson I was never meant to learn. When I said no, I didn't realize it would echo louder than any goodbye. At first I thought maybe he just needed time to cool off. Maybe Clara would call once things settled, tell me they were fine, that Eli had overreacted, that love was stronger than pride. But days passed, then weeks, and still nothing. I tried calling. Once, twice, 10 times. Every ring ended the same way, a long, empty dial tone stretching into silence. Then one afternoon, the line didn't even connect. My number had been blocked. That's when I knew this wasn't a pause. It was a wall. Clara was gone. No messages, no letters, no little videos of Henry laughing in the background, waving his tiny hand at the screen. The house grew too quiet. There was no reason to check my phone anymore. No one left to expect. Every night, I'd still turn on the porch light, the same one Henry loved to watch flicker. I told myself it was for safety, but deep down I knew it was for them. A beacon, a prayer, a mother's silent hope. Sometimes I'd catch myself setting 2 plates for dinner out of habit. Then I'd stop, stare at the empty chair, and quietly put one back. In the mornings, I walked to the mailbox, pretending I was just stretching my legs. But my hands trembled every time I opened the lid. Bills, flyers. Nothing with Clara's handwriting. Weeks turned into months, and the silence wrapped around me like a fog. The silence was louder than any scream. It's strange how absence can make more noise than presence ever did. It filled every corner of the house, the ticking clock, the hum of the fridge, the echo of my own breath. I started talking to myself just to hear a voice, to remind myself I still existed. At church, people asked, "How's Clara?" and little Henry. I smiled, lied softly. "They're doing fine," and changed the subject. Because how do you explain losing someone who's still alive? Each night, I'd sit by the window, staring at the porch light. I'd whisper, "Are you eating enough? Is Henry warm? Does he still draw little suns on the wall?" But the wind never answered. Guilt began to settle, like dust, slow, silent, impossible to brush away. Did I abandon them? Or finally save myself? I replayed that last phone call again and again. His voice, that threat, my refusal, was no an act of cruelty or the only mercy I had left. There's no manual for motherhood, no line that tells you when love becomes survival. All I knew was that the emptier my bank account became, the heavier my chest felt. And the quieter my phone was, the more I wondered if I'd made the right choice. 6 months passed. The seasons changed. The maple outside turned gold, then bare. Winter crept in with a stillness that matched the hollowness inside me. I moved through my days like a shadow, slow, deliberate, careful not to stir up memories. I'd stop at the grocery store and glance at the apples, remembering how Clara used to bake pies on Sundays. Sometimes I bought them. Sometimes I couldn't bear to. On Christmas Eve, I hung one stocking instead of 3. Old neighbors stopped by, offered cookies. Small talk, pity wrapped in kindness. When they left, I sat alone by the tree lights, blinking steady, hopeful, and whispered, "Merry Christmas, Clara, wherever you are." The house was cold, but I didn't turn up the heat. I told myself it was fine, that solitude was better than betrayal, that quiet was safer than chaos. But in truth, I missed even the noise. I missed the sound of Henry's little feet running across the floor the way he'd ask 100 questions before bedtime. I missed Clara's laugh, soft, tired, real. I even missed the ordinary grocery lists, birthday plans, small talk about weather. But most of all, I missed being needed. It's a cruel thing to give your life to others, only to realize you've built a world where your absence doesn't leave a hole. Then one evening, when the light outside had faded, and I was halfway through another cup of cold tea, the phone rang. It startled me. I stared at it, frozen. The number wasn't saved, but it looked familiar. For a heartbeat, I didn't dare breathe. Then, trembling, I answered. "Hello?" A pause. Then a voice, small, shaky one I hadn't heard in half a year. "Mom, can we talk?" Everything in me wanted to cry, to shout, to ask 1,000 questions at once. Where are you? Are you safe? Is Henry okay? Why didn't you call? But all I managed was a whisper. "Clara." Her breath hitched. I could hear it, that old mixture of pride and pain. I'm sorry, Mom." And just like that, the wall I'd been staring at for months cracked. Tears I thought had dried forever rose up again, blurring the world around me. For the first time in half a year, I didn't feel invisible. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone as if holding her hand through the static. "Yes, sweetheart," I said softly. "We can talk." It's strange how one sound of familiar voice, after months of silence, can thaw a heart you thought had frozen for good. When Clara called, my breath caught somewhere between disbelief and relief. For half a year, my phone had been nothing but a reminder of loss. But that evening, it felt alive again. "Mom," she whispered the way she used to when she was a little girl and needed comfort. "I'm sorry. I should have called sooner. I didn't ask the questions crowding my mind. Where have you been? Why didn't you write? Was it really your choice to cut me off?" Because hearing her voice again was enough. "I'm just glad you called, sweetheart," I said softly. "How are you?" She paused. Then gently, carefully, as though testing the ground, before stepping forward, she said, "Eli's changed, Mom. He's working again. He's really trying this time." I stayed quiet, listening, measuring her tone. It was the same mix of hope and fear I'd heard before, but something inside me, the part that still believed in miracles, wanted to trust her. "He wants to make things right," Clara continued. "We both do. Can we have dinner together? Just us. A fresh start. A fresh start." How many times had we said that phrase before? Still my heart softened. Because that's what mothers do. We choose hope, even when it's been shattered before. "Of course, dear," I said. I'd love that. The following evening, I stood in front of their house for the first time in 6 months. My hands trembled as I reached for the doorbell. Before I could press it, the door opened, and there he was, Eli Turner. Same easy smile, same polished manners. He looked calmer, clean-shaven, dressed neatly. For a moment, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, Clara was right. "Mrs. Lane," he said, stepping aside, "please come in." The house smelled faintly of cinnamon and apples. Inside the table was set neatly candles, flowers, the soft hum of music playing from the kitchen. Clara rushed over and hugged me, holding on a little too long. "I missed you, Mom," she whispered. I held her tight. "I missed you too, sweetheart." And then a small pair of arms wrapped around my legs. Grandma, we missed you. Henry's voice, bright, innocent, filled the room like sunlight. I knelt down, tears prickling my eyes, and hugged him close. His laughter washed away months of silence in a single sound. Look, Grandma, he said proudly, holding up a drawing, a family hand in hand, beneath a bright red roof. I smiled. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Dinner was? Nice. Too nice. Eli kept the conversation light, asking about my garden, the library, my health. He laughed easily, nodded in all the right places, and every now and then he reached for Clara's hand, a gesture so practiced it almost convinced me. Almost. When the plates were cleared, he disappeared into the kitchen and returned with something in his hands. A pie, golden crust, perfect edges, the faint aroma of cinnamon and butter. My favorite. He placed it gently in front of me, smiling. Baked it myself, he said. It's a peace offering. Clara nodded, smiling softly. He really wanted to make this for you, Mom. I stared at it, at the steam curling up from the crust, the scent so familiar, it ached. My chest tightened. Memories flooded in Sunday dinners, birthdays, all the times I'd baked for them when things were hard. It's just an apple pie, I told myself. Just a gesture. Eli chuckled lightly. Family's family, right? Something in the way he said it, too smooth, too polished, made me uneasy. But then, Henry climbed into my lap, tugging at my sleeve, showing me another drawing. The moment softened, and I let the doubt fade. We sat there a while longer, Clara's laughter quieter than usual. Eli's smile never slipping. Henry curled beside me, warm and safe. For a moment, it almost felt like the life I dreamed of for them, peaceful, whole, simple. When it was time to go, Eli walked me to the door. He handed me the pie, carefully wrapped in foil. Take it with you, he said. Bring it next week. We're going to Canada, Henry's birthday trip. Canada, I repeated, surprised. Just a few days, Clara said quickly. A family trip. It'll be good for all of us. Mom, please come with us. It would mean a lot. Her eyes, hopeful, pleading, were the same eyes that once begged for bedtime stories and one more glass of milk. And I've never been good at saying no to my daughter. I don't know, I murmured. It's been so long. Maybe, please, Mom. She took my hand, squeezed it. Let's try again. For Henry. That name Henry was the final push. I smiled, faintly, nodded. All right, sweetheart. I'll come. Eli's grin widened. That's great news, Mrs. Lane. Really great news. He opened the door, helped me with my coat, and as I stepped out into the cool night, I caught one last glimpse of the pie resting neatly in my hands, warm, fragrant, innocent. The crust shimmered under the porch light, golden brown, dusted with sugar, hiding something I couldn't yet see. As I walked to my car, the scent clung to me, sweet, nostalgic, almost too perfect. I told myself it was just dessert, just kindness, just a peace offering. But deep down, somewhere quiet, somewhere I didn't want to hear, a voice whispered, "Be careful. Even the sweetest things can hide the darkest truths." The morning of the trip, the sky was clear, too clear, the kind of stillness that feels like a held breath before a storm. I had packed everything neatly, clothes, snacks, Henry's favorite book. The pie sat carefully wrapped in foil, resting on the counter like a symbol of peace. For the first time in months, I felt something close to contentment. Maybe this really was a fresh start. Maybe forgiveness had finally done what anger never could. Then the phone rang. I checked the caller ID. Eli. I hesitated. A flicker of unease stirring somewhere deep inside. Still I answered. Hello. His voice came through fast, nervous, too sharp around the edges. You packed the pie, right? Yes, I said slowly. It's here on the counter. Good. Don't open it. He paused. It's got a surprise filling. A surprise filling. Something in the way he said it, rushed, shaky, made the air around me change. I frowned. What do you mean? Just leave it sealed, all right? Don't touch it. I'll explain when we get there. And then he hung up. No goodbye. No thank you. Just gone. I stood there, the phone still pressed to my ear, the dial tone humming in my chest. My heart began to beat louder. Not faster, just heavier. It's the sound mothers hear when something isn't right. You don't learn it. You don't teach it. You just know. I stared at the pie. Steam no longer rose from it. The scent of apple, cinnamon, and sugar filled the room. But now it didn't smell sweet. It smelled like a lie. Mothers know when something's wrong, even when the world says trust. My hands moved before my mind could stop them. I peeled away the foil. The crust flaked gently under my fingers, golden and perfect. I whispered to the empty kitchen, "It's just a pie, Margaret, just a pie." But my gut screamed otherwise. I grabbed a knife, slid it slowly through the crust. The blade caught on something. Not apples, not pastry, plastic. My breath froze. Carefully, I lifted the top layer. Beneath the caramelized apples, nestled deep under the filling, were 3 small plastic bags, tightly sealed, packed with fine white powder. The world tilted. I staggered back, clutching the edge of the counter as my knees weakened. The room seemed to darken, shadows lengthening around me. I blinked, but they didn't fade. Each breath felt heavier than the last, pressing down on my chest. He used me. He used my kindness as camouflage. The words rang through my mind, bitter and raw. If I had crossed that border, if I'd driven into Canada with that pie, it wouldn't have been a family trip. It would have been a 20-year sentence. 20 years. For a crime I didn't even know I was carrying. I thought of the headlines, the photos, the shame. Grandmother arrested in cross-border drug smuggling. My name, my face, everything I'd built, everything I'd loved destroyed. And for what a peace offering. A lie wrapped in sugar. I sank into a chair, my body shaking. Anger, disbelief, heartbreak, all at once. How could he do this? How could Clara let him? Tears blurred my vision, but I blinked them away. No time for weakness. Not now. I reached for the phone. Hands trembling. Dialed Clara. She answered on the second ring. "Mom." Her voice wavered. "Clara," I said, trying to steady my tone. "Tell me the truth. What's in that pie?" There was a pause, then a gasp. "What, Mom? I don't know." He said it was sugar. For decoration, I didn't. Her words broke into sobs. I closed my eyes, swallowing the lump in my throat. She was crying, and for a moment she was a child again, lost, scared, clinging to a story someone else told her. I wanted to believe her. But belief had nearly cost me everything. "Listen to me," I said firmly. "Pack your bags. Take Henry. Come home." "Mom," she whispered, voice trembling. "What about Eli?" My jaw tightened. "You let me worry about him." There was silence, the heavy kind, thick with realization. Then softly she said, "Okay." I hung up my hand, lingering on the receiver, my pulse still echoing in my ears. The pie sat on the counter, open, now exposed. The crust, once golden and beautiful, looked different under the harsh kitchen light, like something poisonous wearing a friendly face. I thought back to the dinner. His calm smile, his practiced laugh, the way he'd said, "Family's family, right? No. Family doesn't build cages for each other." I took a deep breath, steadying my shaking hands. There was no more room for doubt. No more space for excuses. Love, I realized, had made me blind. But fear had finally made me see. I walked to the trash can, stared at the pie one last time, then carefully closed the lid over it. This wasn't forgiveness. This was survival. As I wiped my hands, I caught my reflection in the kitchen window. Older, yes, but not weak. Not anymore. I turned off the light, leaving the kitchen in shadow. The phone still sat on the counter, silent, waiting. So was I. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for an apology, or a promise, or a miracle. I was waiting for justice. By the time the sun began to set, my hands had stopped shaking. The fear was still there, quiet, steady, but now it had a direction. I wasn't driving toward a family dinner. I was driving toward the truth. The road stretched out before me, empty, except for the sound of my heartbeat echoing in my ears. The pie sat on the passenger seat, sealed in its foil, again like evidence waiting to be shown. For years, I'd carried their burdens, their debts, their lies, always believing that love meant staying. But tonight, love meant ending it. When I pulled up to the house, the lights were on. Through the window, I saw Henry playing with his toys on the floor. Clara sat on the couch, her face, pale eyes red from crying. I parked, stepped out and walked to the door. Each step felt heavier, but also stronger, like the ground itself was holding me up. The door opened before I could knock. Eli stood there, smiling too wide, too easy. Mrs. Lane, he greeted, that same rehearsed warmth in his voice. "Did you bring the pie?" I met his eyes. Then slowly, I lifted the foil-covered dish and held it up between us. "You mean this?" Before he could respond, I stepped inside, walked straight to the kitchen table, and threw it down. The crust cracked open, golden shell shattering against the wood, and a burst of white powder spilled across the table like smoke. Time seemed to freeze. Henry's laughter stopped. Clara gasped, covering her mouth. Eli's face drained of color. He stared at the mess, then at me. "Margaret, please," I cut him off. Voice steady and cold. "No, you don't get to mom me anymore." The words hung in the air, sharp as glass. For the first time in years, I saw him truly. Saw him not as the charming boy I once thought could save my daughter, but as the man who'd nearly destroyed us all. He reached for the table, trying to scoop the powder, his hands trembling. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said, stepping closer. "You used me. You used my kindness. You were going to let me cross that border carrying this." I gestured at the mess, the proof, the betrayal laid bare. Clara's sobs filled the silence. She sank to the floor, pulling Henry into her arms. "I didn't know, Mom. I swear I didn't. He told me it was sugar." I turned to her, softened my voice. "I know, sweetheart. I know." Then to Eli, sharp again. "You were willing to risk everything, your wife, your child, me, just to save yourself." He backed away, hands up, voice cracking. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. They were just going to pay me. I didn't have a choice." "You always had a choice," I interrupted. "You just kept choosing wrong." He froze. And for a brief moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not guilt, not shame, but fear. That was when I reached for the phone and dialed 911. "What's your emergency?" My voice didn't tremble. "I need to report a drug smuggling attempt. The suspect is in my daughter's home." Eli lunged forward. "Hang up, Margaret, please." I held up my free hand, firm. "Don't you dare." Clara stood clutching Henry close, tears streaking down her face. "Stop, Eli. Just stop." But he didn't. He turned, pacing, huttering to himself. "This isn't happening. This isn't." Within minutes, the sirens pierced the night. Red and blue lights washed over the walls. Henry pressed his face into Clara's shoulder. "Mommy, what's happening?" She kissed his hair, whispering, "It's okay, baby. Grandma's here." The door burst open. 2 officers entered, calm but firm. One took my statement. The other moved toward Eli, who stood frozen, hands shaking. "Sir, turn around! Hands behind your back!" Eli's voice cracked. "Wait, no. You don't understand. It's a mistake." But the click of the cuffs drowned out the rest. As they led him out, his eyes met mine, pleading, desperate. "Please, Margaret, tell them." I shook my head slowly. "You've told enough lies for all of us." They guided him to the car. The red and blue lights flickered against the windows, painting the walls like a confession. Clara stood beside me, silent, holding Henry tight. Her shoulders trembled, but her chin lifted. This time, she didn't defend him. This time, she let him go. Henry peeked up wide-eyed. "Grandma, is Daddy in trouble?" I knelt down, cupping his small face in my hands. "He made a bad choice, sweetheart. But we'll be okay." He nodded slowly, as if trying to understand a world that had just cracked open. When the patrol car pulled away, the night seemed heavier, quieter, as though the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. Inside the table was still dusted with white, the crust broken, the lie exposed. I picked up a cloth, started wiping it away. Each stroke steadied my hands, reminded me I wasn't cleaning up his mess anymore. I was clearing space for something new. The officers returned with papers, questions, explanations. Clara answered, voice trembling but sure. She told them everything. Every secret, every lie. When it was over, they handed me the report to sign. My pen hovered for a moment, then pressed down. The ink bled into the page, final permanent. A chapter closed. As they left, I walked to the doorway, watching the red lights fade into the distance. The night was still. The air smelled like rain and endings. I turned back toward the house, the home that once echoed with hope, now dim and silent. Clara stood in the hallway, holding Henry's hand. She looked at me, tired, ashamed, but also free. For the first time in years, we understood each other without words. I gave her a small nod. She nodded back. Then I stepped outside. The porch light flickered above me, the same one I kept on for half a year, waiting for them to come home. Now it finally meant something different. Not waiting, not hoping, just peace. I took a deep breath, exhaled slowly, and whispered to the night, "It's over." Then I walked down the steps, turned back once at the darkened windows, the quiet house, and sighed. Sometimes love means letting go. Sometimes it means standing up. Tonight it meant both. They sentenced him to 24 months. 2 years for smuggling forgery, and everything else that came unraveled when the truth finally surfaced. When the judge read the verdict, I didn't feel triumphant. There was no victory in watching a life collapse, only the quiet ache of what could have been. Clara sat beside me in the courtroom, holding my hand so tightly, her fingers shook. Eli didn't look at us, not once. When it was over, we walked outside into the sunlight, cold, sharp, but honest. No more lies, no more shadows. For the first time in years, the silence between us didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. That evening, Clara packed what little she had left and came home. No speeches, no tears, just a quiet knock on the door and the sound of suitcases rolling across the threshold. Henry ran inside first, his laughter echoing through the hallway. It was the same sound I'd missed for months now, back bright and full of life. We started over, together. The first few weeks were quiet, tentative, like learning to breathe again, after being underwater too long. Clara helped me in the kitchen, folded laundry, took Henry to school. There were moments she'd pause mid-task, her eyes drifting far away somewhere heavy, and I knew where her thoughts went. One afternoon, as we unpacked boxes in her new room, she stopped holding an old photograph of her wedding. The edges were frayed, the smiles inside bittersweet. She whispered almost to herself, "How could I be so blind?" I placed a hand on her shoulder. "Love isn't blindness, dear," I said softly. "It's just hope in disguise." She nodded, eyes glistening. We didn't speak after that. We didn't need to. Day by day, the house began to change. Not in how it looked, but how it felt. The air grew warmer, the laughter louder. Clara found part-time work at a local community center, teaching music again. Her voice, once hesitant, began to carry strength. She paid her own bills, managed her own savings, learned the taste of independence. As for me, I learned something too. After years of saying yes to keep peace, I finally learned the power of no. No when old habits whispered that love means sacrifice. No when guilt tried to drag me back into silence. No when the past came knocking, dressed as pity or obligation. Because no isn't cruelty. Sometimes it's the first word of healing. Henry adjusted faster than anyone. Children often do. He made friends at school, painted pictures of houses with 3 smiling faces, his new family portrait. Sometimes he'd ask about his father, not with anger, just curiosity. "Where is Daddy now?" And Clara would answer gently, "He's learning from his mistakes, sweetheart." That seemed to be enough. Life didn't become perfect, but it became honest. We started small traditions. Saturday breakfasts, Sunday walks, bedtime stories with extra pages. Every now and then, I'd catch Clara watching me, her eyes soft, as if realizing for the first time how much love can endure and how much it shouldn't have to. One morning, Henry tugged at my sleeve. "Grandma, can we bake a pie?" I laughed, heart lifting. "A real pie this time." He nodded eagerly. With sugar and apples, no surprises. So we gathered in the kitchen, 3 generations around one counter. Flour dusted our clothes. Laughter filled the air. Clara rolled the dough. Henry shaped the crust with clumsy fingers. And I sprinkled cinnamon the way my mother once taught me. No secrets. No fear, just family. When the timer dinged, we pulled it from the oven. Golden, warm, honest. The scent filled the room. Not heavy, not haunting, just sweet enough to make us smile. We sat by the window plates in hand, sunlight spilling across the table. Henry took the first bite and grinned. "It's perfect," Clara smiled at me. "We did it, Mom." I nodded. "Yes, dear. We really did." It wasn't just a pie. It was a promise that love, when honest, doesn't need to hide behind anything. As the day faded, I watched them together, my daughter and grandson, laughing alive. The house felt whole again, not because everything was fixed, but because we'd stopped pretending it was. Sometimes, healing doesn't come with grand gestures. Sometimes it comes in small things: clean hands, open hearts, shared meals. Forgiveness didn't happen overnight. It came in layers, like peeling back a crust, one truth at a time. There were nights I'd still wake up heart racing, replaying every what if. But then I'd hear Henry's soft snore from the next room, or Clara humming quietly as she folded laundry, and I'd remember we were safe. That was enough. I forgave Eli, not for his sake, but for ours. Because carrying hatred is like holding onto poison, waiting for the other person to die while you're the one drinking. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, I'd whisper to myself. It's freeing yourself from their lies. And I did. I forgave myself too for the years I mistook love for rescue, for the silence I thought was patience, for the times I gave when I should have let go. We were all learning. Clara learned to walk on her own 2 feet. I learned to rest mine. And Henry, he learned that love, real love, doesn't come wrapped in conditions. Now, on quiet evenings, when the world feels still, I light the porch lamp. Not because I'm waiting anymore, but because I like the glow. It reminds me that even after the darkest nights, there's always warmth waiting, if you're brave enough to rebuild. And sometimes, when the wind carries the faint scent of apples through the air, I close my eyes and smile, not with sorrow, but gratitude. Because we survived the storm, and we came out cleaner than before. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft strokes of gold and rose. Inside the little kitchen, the scent of baked apples lingered warm, real honest. Margaret sat by the window, a slice of pie, before her steam curling in the fading light. Across from her, Henry swung his legs, humming a tune, his cheeks still dusted with flour. They ate in silence, not the heavy kind, not the one filled with fear, but the gentle silence that comes when peace finally finds its home. Margaret glanced out the window. Beyond the porch light, the ocean shimmered under the dying sun. Her reflection gazed back at her older, steadier Free. She smiled faintly. That day she whispered, "I turned the car around." But truly, I turned my life around. For years, she had carried burdens disguised as love, lies wrapped in kindness, traps dressed as trust. But now she knew love without truth isn't love. It's a leash. She took a slow breath, savoring the sweetness of the moment, not of sugar, but of clarity. The knife glided through the crust, revealing a golden filling, simple, pure, honest. Her voice softened, rich with understanding. They baked lies into my love, but truth rose higher than any crust. The light caught her hands steady, now unafraid, as she placed a slice on Henry's plate. He grinned, biting into the pie, giggling when crumbs spilled onto the table. She laughed softly, wiping them away, her heart full not of regret, but of gratitude. Forgiveness had not erased the past, but it had freed her from it. Outside, the sky deepened into twilight. The porch lamp flickered to life, not a beacon of waiting anymore, but a symbol of warmth, of a home rebuilt on truth. Margaret looked at Henry, his eyes wide, his world still new. She reached out, brushed a strand of hair from his forehead, and whispered, "You'll grow up knowing love is not what you hide for. It's what you stand for." He smiled, not fully understanding, but nodding just the same. Margaret turned back to the window, watching the horizon fade into calm. And in that quiet, she left the audience with one final thought. A question lingering like the echo of a wave. If love asked you to cross a line, would you still call it love? A pause. Soft, deliberate. Then her voice gentle, resolute. Comment. Yes, if you believe. Saying no can also be love.